Okay, so maybe you're one of those people who's always been fascinated by the world of programming, but not sure it's for you.
Yeah.
We're going to try to unpack some common myths about programming and hopefully give you a much clearer picture of what it really takes.
Yeah. It's amazing how some of these ideas about programming get stuck, even when they're not quite right.
For sure. Like, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, that programming is all about the code.
Yeah.
Like, you have to just be this coding machine.
Right.
When we know that it's just one piece of the puzzle.
It is, think about it more like this. You've been given the task of building an app that's going to help people track their fitness goals, right?
Yeah.
So that's a real world problem.
Right.
And the code that you write is really just one tool to build that solution.
Right.
So before you even write a single line of code, you're thinking about the user experience, you're thinking about the design, the features.
Right.
It's a very strategic process.
And that probably requires a lot of communication too, right?
Right.
Because you're not just a lone wolf coder in a dark room.
Absolutely not. No more like, huddled in a corner somewhere.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's incredibly collaborative. You're constantly interacting with designers, with other programmers, even with clients.
Wow.
So being able to articulate your ideas clearly and work effectively in a team, that's critical.
It's so interesting. Okay, let's address another big one. The myth of the programming prodigy.
Yes.
Who just innately understands this complex math.
Right.
I'll admit that one always intimidated me.
I think that stereotype probably scares a lot of people off unnecessarily.
Totally.
There are certainly areas where very advanced math is required,
Right.
but the vast majority of programming boils down to just logical thinking and breaking down problems into smaller steps.
Okay.
It's a little bit like, I think, building with Legos. You don't have to be a mathematician to understand how the pieces fit together.
That's a great analogy. That's a really good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not about being like this math whiz. It's about understanding the logic and the structure.
Right.
Okay, so let's say you've embraced the logic.
Okay.
You're feeling good.
All right.
But then there's this fear of needing to memorize every single code command.
Oh, gosh, if that were true, I'd still be studying.
Right.
Even the most seasoned programmers rely on documentation. They rely on online resources all the time.
Which reminds me of all those late nights I spent on Stack Overflow.
Exactly.
Practically a programmer's best friend.
Absolutely.
But that's interesting to hear that it's more about understanding the core concepts of programming.
It really is.
So once you grasp those, then you can just look up the specific syntax or commands for any language.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's like you understand the grammar rules of a language.
Yeah.
But you might still need a dictionary to look up a specific word.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, so let's talk about a never-ending debate.
Okay.
Which programming language should I learn first?
Right.
Is there even a best one?
Oh, that's a trap.
Yep.
That sparks so many debates online. I've seen it. But really the thing is that each language is designed for a specific purpose.
Right.
They're like different tools in a toolbox.
Okay.
So, if you want to build websites, you're likely going to focus on languages like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Okay.
If you're more into data analysis, then Python might be your go-to.
Gotcha. So instead of chasing this mythical best language,
Right.
it's about choosing the right tool for the job.
It is.
Or in this case, the right language for the project you want to tackle.
Exactly. And that actually leads into a point that I think a lot of aspiring programmers will find really reassuring.
Ooh, please do tell it. I'm all about busting myths and boosting confidence today.
Right, for sure. Real programmers Google a lot.
Okay. I feel very seen right now, but being able to find the answers and the solutions is a huge part of the process, right?
Huge. Yeah, it's essential. And it shows that you're resourceful, that you don't let roadblocks stop you. And, with programming constantly evolving, being comfortable with continuous learning is key.
Right. Speaking of which, let's talk about the formal education side of things.
Yeah.
Do you absolutely need a computer science degree to land a job in this field?
Well, it's a question I get asked a lot, and it's a nuanced answer.
For sure.
A CS degree can definitely give you a really solid foundation in the theory and the principles behind programming.
Right, like the why behind the how.
Exactly. But here's the interesting part. There are so many successful programmers out there who are self-taught.
Oh, wow.
So what matters most is your passion for programming and your ability to demonstrate your skills,
So it's more about what you can do up rather than just having that piece of paper.
Exactly. Build a portfolio of projects, contribute to open source work, show the world what you're capable of.
I love that Okay, another myth I've encountered is that programming is this solo endeavor. Is that your experience?
Not at all. Well, in reality, most programming projects are highly collaborative.
Okay.
You're working with designers, you're working with other programmers, project managers, clients even.
So those communication skills we talked about earlier are absolutely essential to be successful.
100%. Yeah. And remember, you don't have to have it all figured out on your own. Asking for help, sharing knowledge, that's all part of being a good programmer and a valuable team member.
I think that's super encouraging to hear,
Yeah.
especially for somebody just starting out.
Yeah.
It's not about being this lone genius.
You're right.
It's about working together.
It's a team sport.
I like that. Okay, now let's talk about something that I struggled with a lot when I was starting out, the pressure to write perfect code.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh.
That's a common one,
Yeah.
especially early on.
Tell me about it. I still get hung up on it.
It's so easy to get caught up in that, but
Yeah.
the truth is no one writes perfect code on the first try, not even like seasoned professionals.
So how do you get past that fear of not getting it right immediately?
Well, I think for me, it was really about embracing this process of iterative development.
Yeah.
So you start with a working solution, however basic it might be, and then you just gradually refine it
Yeah.
and improve it over time.
It's all about testing, debugging, and constantly iterating until you reach that, more polished final product.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's not about aiming for perfection right away. It's about building upon each iteration as you go.
Exactly. And that actually brings us to another really important point, especially with all the advancements in artificial intelligence these days.
Yeah, is AI going to replace programmers altogether? I feel like that's a big concern that people have.
Totally. It's a hot topic for sure. And it makes sense, right? AI is changing so fast. But I think instead of thinking about it as AI replacing programmers, think of it more like this powerful new tool that's going to change how programmers work.
Okay, so more like AI assisting programmers rather than taking over completely.
Exactly. Like imagine things like, automating repetitive code or helping to identify bugs.
Right.
AI can handle a lot of that stuff, which frees up programmers to really focus on the more creative and complex problem-solving tasks.
Right, so it's sort of like we have to adapt to these new technologies and learn how to use them to our advantage.
Absolutely. And you know what? That actually ties back to that misconception that, once you learn one programming language, you've learned them all.
Right.
While there are definitely transferable skills, each language has its own, quirks and best practices and ways of doing things.
Yeah, it's like learning a new spoken language. The more you know, the easier it becomes to pick up others.
Exactly. It's about building that foundational understanding of how programming logic works. And that, actually leads us to maybe one final myth I'd love to debunk before we wrap up.
Lay it on me, I'm ready.
Okay, so that image of the sleep-deprived programmer hunched over their keyboard working all night long?
Oh yeah, the stereotype.
It's definitely out there, but honestly, taking breaks, prioritizing your well-being, that's actually essential for success in this field, I think.
Yeah, burnout is real, and it's so easy to fall into that trap.
It is. Programming is mentally demanding, and you got to take care of your most valuable asset, which is your brain.
Right.
Step away, recharge, come back with fresh eyes. You'll be a better programmer for it.
I love that. This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like we've debunked some major myths about programming and hopefully encouraged anyone who's maybe been a little hesitant to give it a try. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners today before we wrap up?
I think the biggest thing to remember is that programming is a constantly evolving field. So embrace the learning process. Be curious. Don't be afraid to experiment. And most importantly, have fun with it.
I love that. Embrace the journey, the challenges, the triumphs. It's all part of the exciting world of programming. Well, folks, we've reached the end of our deep dive. Hopefully you've learned a thing or two and feel ready to start your own coding adventures. Until next time.